is Danny Flexen here for SecondsOut, here with the latest edition of ReFLEXions. We're usually here every Monday 4:30 p.m. to talk about the boxing action from the weekend just gone. Unfortunately, due to being drafted in at very late notice into childcare duties yesterday, there was no ReFLEXions, so it's a day late. Apologies for that. And you might be even more disappointed when you hear the subject that I'm going to be talking about. But it would be remiss of me not to at least discuss the YouTuber boxing event that took place over the weekend. Now, let me preface this by saying, not my cup of tea at all. The brief glimpses I got of the event, I can't say I loved it or it attracted me in any way. I wasn't really aware of it until about 2 weeks before it took place, and we had people reach out to us about covering it. But it seemed to be all anyone was talking about on social media. Certainly on my feeds over the weekend. We did ridiculously large viewing numbers for all of our related content that we put on the channel. And there were well-known boxers throughout a packed house in attendance as well, watching the likes of Deji and Alex Wasabi, names that for me certainly don't roll off the tongue, but for a younger YouTube savvy demographic seem to be as up there with the likes of, for us, some of the people in attendance, Anthony Joshua, Derek Chisora, Andre Berto, even from the US. Although I'm not suggesting he came over on Concord or whatever to watch that show specifically. But there's clearly something there. There's clearly an attraction. There's clearly people were willing to pay for it on pay-per-view. It wasn't free to watch. And it seems to have really piqued the interest at large. And while it doesn't do much for me, I wouldn't be doing my job, and I don't just mean as a reporter, I mean as a content director for SecondsOut as well, if I didn't at least try and dissect and diagnose why it's so popular. But more importantly, because I'm a hardcore boxing fan and boxing person at heart, what, if anything, we as a sport can learn from the success of events like these. Because I know there's this kind of common narrative that if the best were fighting the best more often in boxing and the mega fights could be made, then this whole kind of growth of YouTube-orientated combat would die down. I'm not sure I agree with that. I think they're two very different audiences from the start, and I think there's quite limited crossover between the two. But a couple of things I did pick out. One is the pay-per-view pricing. Now, for this show, I think it was $9.95 or $9.99. Half the price of even the lowest priced boxing pay-per-views on Sky Sports and BT. DAZN obviously now moving into pay-per-view, so it's quite a pertinent point right now. Now, I'm not suggesting that all boxing pay-per-views should go down even lower. I know our cousins in the US, or boxing fans in the US, tend to pay a lot more than we do, and also not even for the biggest fights sometimes. But I think this shows that if you price something, sensibly, depending on what level of event it is, you can make money from it. Now, the effect of this in boxing could mean that we get lower level fights now going on to pay-per-view that wouldn't have been otherwise, albeit at a cheaper price. The effect I'd like to see is that certain shows or fights are still on pay-per-view that are now, but perhaps at a cheaper price to get more views, more exposure, higher profile for the fighters and the brands involved. I think that's kind of playing the long game rather than just a quick cash grab. I think the success of this, Brooke Khan, two fighters well past their prime, not huge names anymore outside of the UK. As we know now, and Adam Smith revealed, Sky Sports box office did over 500,000 buyers. And I always knew it would. I said to Ben Shalom at the launch press conference, he was saying, how many do you think this will do? I said, definitely over 500,000. He said, yeah, I think so too. But a lot of people saying, it's going to be risky. It might not do over 300,000. And I always knew that the attraction was there because it's about the personalities, it's about the fighters involved, it's about the relationship that the fans have with those fighters. And that kind of leads me on to my other salient point, and I think this one's even more important, is that the reason all these fans, and they're not boxing fans, they're YouTube fans or the fans of the specific personalities involved, in the same way that people who buy tickets for their local prospect who they're friends with to have a 4-rounder at York Hall, they're not necessarily boxing fans, but they're supporting someone they feel like they know or that they do legitimately know. And I think it's similar with this YouTube stuff, is that, you've followed Deji, Wasabi, or maybe Deji's brother KSI, whoever it might be, for months, years, whatever, on their social media, their YouTube channels. You know what they do. You'd watch them if they were doing gaming, combat, athletics, whatever it might be. And boxing is just it lends itself to, being an exciting, attractive sport. You get to see people having a fight, basically, but, under the bright lights with entrance music, and they're people that you followed for ages, they're people that you identify with or relate to, and then you get to see them swapping blows. And I guess the key thing here is you're invested in the combatants. Maybe not all of them, but certainly the ones that, you like or you follow, and you're paying to further that investment. You're literally investing them after being emotionally invested. And I think that is the biggest thing that boxing can learn from this. We need to make sure that the fans, particularly in the UK, because that's where I do most of my work, focus on the boxers, invest in the boxers, find out more about their backstories, relate to them more. And I think that's why Khan Brook was so successful as well. I don't think we've got as many fighters like that these days. People invested in Khan because of his silver medal as a 17-year-old, kind of grew from there. He's been in and out of the newspapers. He was in I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, of course. All of that stuff is charity work, scandals as well. It all kind of furthers a narrative about Khan. People feel like they know him and they invest in what's in his future. Same with Kell Brook. He's had his ups and downs. He had the eye sockets broken. He won a world title out in America. He's had those big arena shows when he was with Matchroom. He's had the stuff that's happened to him outside the ring as well, like the stabbings and things like that. They're not nice things to have happened, but it means people do get more emotionally involved with him as a person and as an athlete. So I think that's the YouTube market, but gone to the next level, because people tend to be invested. If you're someone who watches all these YouTubers, you know most of them. It's not like watching a boxing card where you might know the top 2 fights as a casual fan, but you won't know anyone else on the show. If you're a YouTube fan, these guys are particularly famous in that niche. I might not know any of them are or what they're famous for particularly, but I'm not the target market. But the lesson to be learned is that if you can promote that kind of emotional investment between fan, audience and performer, and it doesn't matter whether it's YouTubers, boxing, professional wrestling, UFC or MMA, if you can promote that kind of relationship between the two, that's the way you make money. That's the way you raise the profile of everyone involved. And that's the way boxing gets more longevity and becomes a top 2 or 3 sport in the UK rather than wherever it is now. I'd say it's in the top 10, but probably the second half of that. When boxing's done right and at the top level, the events can be absolutely huge. But you can't look at boxing as a whole, and there's shows going on every weekend and say we're packing houses every single time. It's not like football where you can have a huge number of matches going across a weekend and a lot of them will be sold out. We've got some work to do, and I think that's a big part of it. I know that when Sky linked up with Boxer and started their relationship, they were very big into telling the backstories of the fighters and promoting that emotional investment. I think DAZN, with a lot of their shoulder program, are trying to do the same. I think BT kind of doing it with their prospect shows. There's one on Friday, Louis Lin at the top of that. I think, to kind of get you involved with the prospects early on in their career, so when they graduate to bigger shows, you're still, hooked on them and you might be willing to buy their pay-per-views eventually. But I think they could be doing a lot more in terms of shoulder programming and, vignettes and stuff while the actual shows are going on. But anything that can be done to achieve that, and it will be that kind of thing, secondary programming, in-depth stuff with the boxers, not just talking to them in a gym about how their training camp's gone. Telling people out there more about what they do outside of the gym, who their family are, what their background is, what drives them, what their inspirations are. All that stuff's incredibly important, and you will share things with certain boxers. You will see a boxer telling their backstory and you will think, I used to do that, or that's why I do this. You don't have to be a boxer yourself. You might go to work every day with a similar driving force as a boxer who goes out and runs every morning. But you'll never know any of that stuff unless it's served to you, unless their backstories and their emotions and their lives are exposed to you, and then you as an audience member can invest in them. That's certainly what I think, and I think if we're going to take anything from the YouTube boxing crowd, and I don't think you can take much from a technical boxing aspect from the brief glimpses I've seen, it is that if you can get that level of emotional investment, relationship between audience and performer, it's only a good thing going forward for boxing. I don't think boxing being better at that will wipe out the YouTube market. I don't think they're competing with each other. I just think that if you combine emotional investment with like combat competition, so people actually fighting each other to prove who the better man or woman is, I think it's an unmissable combination. But yeah, let's see if lessons are learned among people who have more influence than me to actually change things on the TV side, certainly. Really appreciate watching. Obviously, I want to hear your views on this. It's a contentious topic, and I'm certainly not a convert to YouTube boxing from having done this video, but I'd definitely like to hear what you guys think about why it is so popular and what, if anything, boxing can learn from it. I'll be back on Thursday, hopefully, won't be late this time, 4:30 PM for FLEXpectations, looking ahead to Lee Wood and Michael Conlon, among other fights. And the next Reflections will be the following Monday, same time, and I really look forward to doing it. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all soon. Cheers.